Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 20 of Just One More Podcast. We're still talking about Star Ocean, the Divine Force, and a couple other games that might get sprinkled throughout this episode. But this is November 27th, 2022, and I am Jeff from Just One More Level. And once again, for another episode, keeping the streak going, we have John from mybrainongames.com. How you doing, John?
I am good. Just dealing with the fallout of getting a new TV and then having to deal with the entertainment stand, entertainment center, the old television, all that stuff.
So got a brand new TV to be able to fully take in the gorgeous scenery of Star Ocean. Such a groundbreaking graphical game.
Yeah, which you had asked, or you'd said, I can't wait to hear what Star Ocean looks like on this. And it looks the same. Like, Star Ocean is not going to, I don't think, would be a good test case for a brand new TV just because there's no improvements we're getting with that game. I did have a chance to finally dabble with some other games because this TV is more advanced than the old TV I had, so I wasn't able to use all the features of the new consoles, the new generation of consoles. So once the Xbox recognized the new TV, it just went in and basically checked all the new check boxes for like 120 hertz, 4K image, all that stuff. So I was like, okay, this is nice. Now I can actually take advantage of everything.
Because I think with the TV that you're replacing, wasn't it like it something with like HDR? You weren't able to actually utilize HDR or something.
So it was a 2017 Sony, and it may have actually been a 2016 Sony that I purchased in 2017. But I'd have to actually go look at the brochure, the information now, but I don't know that it was true 4K. I don't think you're right. I don't think it had HDR. So I didn't realize until maybe a couple weeks into having the Xbox, and then actually going through, maybe it was immediately afterwards, honestly, because I always like going into the options of a game first, and the same way with the console. But going into the TV settings for the Xbox and then realizing, oh, it says this TV can't do like almost anything that the new generation of hardware is bringing, or that, like the step-up consoles from the last generation could do.
Yeah. So it will be nice to see, especially, I know with one of the YouTube channels that I pay attention to, they kind of talked about the first phase of the PS5 kind of being done, the first 2 years or so being wrapped up, like that first wave of all the games we knew about going into the launch of the PS5. So, Xbox is kind of in that same area where we are now 2 years into the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. So seeing what the next wave of games like Starfield and, well, I guess whatever else is coming from Microsoft, being able to see what these developers are able to really do now that they have a little bit more experience with the actual hardware. It'll be nice to see on that TV just how pretty these games can look.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd use Starfield as an example, just because that's coming from Bethesda, and I don't think Bethesda's ever been known necessarily for, hey, this is a stunning visual showpiece. It's more just like, hey, this game is like immense. There's lots of it.
There's 1,000 planets. I guess for the most part, I'm not really sure what all is cooking within the first party development houses of Microsoft right now, but yeah, Starfield was really the only thing that came to mind. But anyway, it'll be nice to see like the next Halo or the next Gears of War, what Forza is going to look like, Fable, that kind of stuff. How these games that are, granted they'll be on Game Pass, but as far as like native on Xbox hardware, it'll be cool to see just how much they can push the envelope, focusing on that hardware. And with, having a TV being able to support all of the features that the Series X brings to the table will be cool.
Yeah, and one thing I naively thought were HDMI cables were all the same. I guess that's not the case. I guess there's been an upgrade at some point, and there's like HDMI 2.1 cables. And so that's another thing. It's like, because I have just so many HDMI cables, I don't know that I hooked the Xbox up with a new one, with basically the one it came with. So whenever I got it set up to the new TV, I also went to the box it came in and been like, oh, yep, there's the HDMI cable. I'm going to go ahead and grab that one since that's, supposedly better.
Yeah, I know that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, and I would assume the S, comes with the latest and greatest in HDMI cord technology, which I'm not well versed in as far as like what makes it better than the previous.
Yeah, I need to sit down and see like, okay, what are the specifications of it? Like, what does it actually do that's different?
Yeah, because like I know there's like HDMI, and then there was like HDMI 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, but as far as like what the PS5 and the series consoles come with, as far as like HDMI 2, I don't know.
It's probably just the bandwidth that it allows to traverse it.
Yeah. So for the most part, I did get a pretty good amount of time into the Divine Force, and really kind of I don't know if you feel the same way with where you're at in the game, because it sounds like we're still fairly close together. I might be in 2-ish hours of gameplay or story, maybe an hour to 2 hours of story ahead of you, but we both made a lot of progress, so there's going to be a lot that we can kind of discuss. But as far as like the areas that we're in, it has really become a slog. As far as the story moving forward. Now I know in the last episode we talked about not a lot of Star Ocean, but you did get to Baldar. Chloe was a captive there. What were your... Oh yeah, and we did talk about the difference between the Asarius high roads and the Asarius plains, both terrible in the performance field.
Yeah, one much worse than the other one.
Yeah,
the high road wasn't too bad until you got into the groups of enemies, but yeah, the plains were terrible.
Yeah. So let's see.
Yeah, so I mean, in Baldar, I had not actually spoke to the people by the time we recorded last week. Basically spoke to the people progressing the story, but you get to Baldar, stuff's going down between the kingdom, the people that Leticia is the princess of, and the Vale Empire, the Imperials.
Yeah.
And they find out, hey, Chloe's being from previous events, Chloe's being held there. So we went and reunited with Chloe. One thing that happened, as you guys are spending the night there, basically saying, hey, Chloe, she's been held captive here. She's in a foreign land. They don't understand her because she doesn't have her communicator. It broke in her crash landing. Elena's saying, like, hey, let's take it easy. Let's spend the night here. Overnight, Leticia takes Ray to Devotion Hill, and kind of like the Asarian high road, the Asarius Plains, it's like one of my favorite areas in the game so far. I love it. It's just like emits vibes. It's nighttime whenever you go. The moon's out. The moon looks massive, and I think there's actually like a couple other planets or nearby orbs in the sky that you see. But this area, Devotion Hill specifically, is just very small. Just sets the backdrop for this specific scene. Except for the giant bunny just voyeurishly watching y'all.
But it doesn't make sense that that's where the bunny is at. Like it's never, nothing is ever explained. It's just, oh, here's this giant bunny that you can turn in those mini bunnies to.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just kind of off to the wild in a sense. Of course, we have seen the larger bunnies in towns before, just never had a chance to interact with them. Which, selling off those, was it? No, I don't know if it was selling off the bunnies to this guy, to this big bunny, because I think you just talk to him and he basically sells off your inventory. But it was later on then whenever I was going through the selling menus and just I hate to keep harping on the menus, but when you go to sell an item, because they don't consolidate into one line item, you're only selling one at a time. But then the menu resets after you sell it back to the very first item. It's like the PlayStation Vita download list all over again.
Yeah, like it is such a horrendous system. It's just aggravating.
And then on top of that, you can't like scroll through pages at a time. You have to go one item at a time.
And another frustrating thing is that if you go too fast, you're not like, it'll move you through the list, but like the information on the far right, like if you're trying to compare items or you're trying to find certain things or whatever, if you go too fast, it won't keep up with what you're going through. So you have to kind of like slowly go through the list if you're wanting to like see what each item does, which is a little frustrating, because especially now that there's so many things that I have, for all the different characters that I have, it's just like I wish like this is not an optimized system. But yeah,
and if
yeah,
if I wanted to harp on something else, there was some top of mind that just like escaped me, but. I don't know, just the menu system in this game, man.
Well, and it still goes back to, I wish all of, like, yes, the Isoa pieces, they grant you things in combat. They, like, if you equip them to a character, they have factors that help in combat. That's cool. Cool feature. I just wish that those pieces were separate from all of the other equipment, because I have so many Isoa pieces now that for the most part, like just stat wise, they don't provide a whole lot. Like they have factors that are pretty cool. Like I've got pieces that give 125% additional experience or 135% additional experience.
Yeah, all the named units are cool, and that's, those are the only things I equip to everyone's accessory slot now.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, that stuff's cool. There's just so many of them. There are so many pieces, and like what you said with like selling things, they all take up an individual line in your inventory, which is just aggravating. And even the sorting feature, I feel like could be better optimized as well. Like I was trying to find, well, what pieces give experience boosts. Well, out of the 80 some odd items or 100 some odd items that or accessories that I have, only 2 of them give an experience boost. So I would like, now I've got their names down. It's I think FaZe and Ted. I think those are the 2 Isoa pieces that give you a boost with your experience. But I had to go line by line to make sure that I was looking at every single one, because the sort feature doesn't factor in what factors the any of your accessories have. That just goes off of if it boosts attack, if it boosts your intellect, if it boosts your guts or whatever. So I feel like, God, I just wish there would be an update that would just make the menus more user-friendly. I really don't think that's too much to ask, but,
No, it's not. But anyways, up on Devotion Hill, Leticia basically just explains to Ray a little bit in detail about how the kingdom and the empire are linked by a familial connection.
Yeah.
Which not that big of news, it's like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of understands, or it kind of explains some of the, I guess, odd tension around the two nations, but it doesn't go into the full backstory on, well, why are you guys so upset? Wait a minute, is that whenever they do?
They kind of gloss over it. They don't go too in depth at that point.
Yeah. At that point, she just says, basically 14 years ago, relations soured.
Yeah.
I am to the point where then she then explains to Ray again and actually gives like kind of the full story on what happened, or at least the event that caused it. But there's more to happen. The shoe has yet to drop.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of around this point. Midas doesn't come out and say it. If I remember correctly, it's kind of in like just a side conversation. One of the reasons, or probably the biggest reason that Midas is not thrilled about the kingdom is the fact that the kingdom was working against against Midas and what he was doing with the Semiomancers, and some of it pertained to cutting funding for his research and the development of what he wanted to ultimately do with the Semiomancer Consortium. But again, as with most of the stuff with this game, it's just kind of glossed over. It's not there's not a whole lot of detail that goes into that. It's just kind of in passing of, oh, this is the reason that Midas hates the kingdom, and then it's not ever talked about again.
No, I mean, I will say at the point where I'm at, everything has been revealed on why Midas hates the kingdom so much. And so I feel like I finally got that total explanation as to why. It's like, okay, yep, I totally understand. I get it.
Yeah. I like, you've dedicated so much of your time and efforts into something, and you're always like having to fight against people who basically dictate the money. So
yeah. And then in Baldar the next morning, they wake up, find out the Veil Empire is attacking, but that maybe the kingdom shot first. Probably in error, but looks like it started something bad, so they kind of hightail it out of there, and then the king suffers some damage. He gets injured.
Yeah, and kind of in that part, Duma reacts to it, but instead of taking the stance of protecting the king, Duma says that it would the more logical decision was to go elsewhere, which Raymond gets pissed off about because Duma could have protected the king and the other, but Duma just didn't see it as a logical choice.
Yeah, and at that point, Duma reveals you unlock the ability to do the estuary cage, whereas we've had the option for an offensive Duma ability in combat. Now we have an option for a defensive Duma ability, basically a big shield that covers everyone.
Yeah, and it's one or the other. Cannot use. No, you can't have the cage going and
do like
dash around.
Yeah, the VA attacks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
ultimately,
during this sequence, and then immediately after, whenever you're back in the kingdom, and you're kind of convening with the military leadership, the political leadership, there's so many named people high up in the army, the military for the kingdom, and then within the political families.
Yeah, they finally there's a lot of characters that get introduced. I think Theo we already knew about. I believe.
Yeah, cousin Theo. We met him in Kato.
Melthea we already kind of knew about, or we already knew about.
Yeah.
Nayan.
Nayan. Nayan we met before going to Baldar, but he's prominently featured here and kind of at least up until where I am even.
And then Canis. Another...
General Canis.
He's not too fond uh, a lot of people. It seems like.
Yeah, there's Duke Clemrath and like Lone Bear.
Yeah.
Like honestly, there was so many introduced kind of all at that one point. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to keep all you guys separate, even though you are all like distinctly different. Just like, okay, you're all just like the generals. You're all the military leadership.
Yeah. And from the notes that I have, pretty much the council talks about how they had no idea that the Vale Empire had such deadly weaponry at their disposal.
Basically just guns. Like, hey, they're using guns probably like circa, earth weaponry, earth guns like the 19th or early 20th century.
Yeah. And essentially like they're talking about how they have these cannons that just emit this light that's just destructive, and
which that is different. They're talking about like the actual guns they have, but then in the cutscene, whenever Baldar's being attacked, there are these like massive light cannons on the Imperial ships. It's like, okay, those are the things doing the damage, even though like the infantry may be having guns at their disposal.
Yeah, and of course, Melthia believes that all of the technology within the kingdom needs to be upgraded. Like they need to really push an effort to improve their own technology if they're wanting to push back against the Vale Empire, which then leads into conversations about some of the stuff that Midas had actually spearheaded before he just kind of said to hell with it and left the kingdom to its own devices, which
the Fulga, the flying crafts,
the aircrafts, that
Ray or someone, an off-worlder or somebody from a developed planet could come and look and say, okay, you guys may be quote unquote underdeveloped, but you're
getting there.
Yeah, you've got some stuff.
Yeah. So for the most part, like there is some potential upgrades that can be done. Of course, the aircraft, while the plan is to make them fly, one thing that Midas was not able to actually do with them was to make them fly. Ultimately leading to kind of this next phase of this little story portion, needing to figure out how to get these aircraft to fly, getting them up off the ground.
Yeah, and Melthia has the solution. She says it's the Levitasaur, which makes you wonder, boy, Midas, levitate.
Yeah.
Why didn't you just try that?
For such a smart character, I guess for such a wise ass type of character, it's really kind of surprising that something could be right in front of his face and he not put two and two together. But because he seems kind of like surprised when he's like, oh, that is what we need. It's like, yeah, it's kind of in the name. So but ultimately the crew has to head to Kato, or head back to Kato.
Gonna travel by sea to reach Nilbeth,
which, if I remember correctly, the last time we were in Kato, we couldn't do anything with the boats because of the Empire basically closing off the waterways, I believe.
No, that you're thinking of Delric, or not Delric. Okay. Rythal.
Rythal. Okay. Yeah. So the group gets to Kato, and they've kind of put a team together to be able to head over to Nilbeth, which Nilbeth is its own nation. It's I think they say it's a neutral nation.
Yeah, they're independent of both the kingdom and the empire.
And Theo and Melthea, they want to go to Nilbeth and try to negotiate terms on mining some of the Levitas ore. And let's see.
It was at this point for me, before progressing the story, that I then said, okay, well, here's a story progression thing where I'm actually going to be leaving this area, this continent perhaps, so let me do some cleanup. I went back and did a lot of the Isoa challenges I had skipped out on, or just the ones that I could now do since ranking up, and I spent like a half hour, an hour session, not too long doing them, but I got a lot of progress made. I ranked up from a level 3 master to a level 6 master, and I think it was a level 5 master. The Squire seeking a challenge in the Kato Bar, actually, which was the first challenger I fought, who actually gave me some difficulty. I lost to him twice before overcoming him.
That's and so yeah, there's. I think you and I have talked about it either on the last episode or the episode before last. Isoa is actually a fairly fun game.
Yeah, and especially like I'm really seeing it now as I'm ranking up, because up until hitting level 5 master, like even up to like the level 4 master challenges, pretty much everything was a cakewalk. Like they'd get me down, they'd get some of my health down, but I mean, I was just going like uncontested, basically just like swamping them, smashing them. And so it's nice to see as it's ranking up, as the boards are getting bigger, that they are actually using a wider variety of units. They're using, in some cases, much stronger units than I have at my disposal, and employing different strategies. Like, I think there was one person I fought who just used nothing but the assassins, which remove the units. And so that was just very frustrating to be like, every other turn, be like, okay, well, there goes this unit. I was setting something up, and I'm not setting that up anymore.
Yeah, because it starts making you really think. It's like, okay, well, because you can see the pieces of your opponent, but you don't know what necessarily, like, especially once you start getting into like the named pieces. It's like, okay, I don't know what this one can do.
Well, all the units that you see in their hands, and it has icons, so you can say, okay, that's the, I think the ones that are confusing to me are like, okay, is that the assassin or the wizard? Because they both kind of look like a jumble of dashes and slashes.
Yeah, but yeah, there's, now that we're starting to get to these opponents that are using assassins more often. It's like, okay, well, I'm not going to just jump in with my strongest pieces just yet. I'm going to kind of test the waters, see where things are at with some of the, lower to mid-range, the double digit to like lower triple digit pieces, because it did get me a couple times, because I was beating everybody. I really wasn't having a challenge. And then I think I may have come across the same guy that gave you some troubles. And I lost, and I was like, wait, how did this get away from me? Like, this just, how, but it was those assassin pieces. I was very aggressive to start off, and, putting pieces out there that were like 240 something points of damage, and then an assassin would come out and just kill it. I'm like, okay, well, so yeah, having to start strategizing a little bit more on like setting things up slower against these opponents. But yeah, I've started to put assassins into, like, I think I had one, but now I've got 3 in my deck, just because they are very powerful pieces. Just being able to say, yeah, I don't like that you have that piece, so I'm just going to take that off the board for you.
Yeah, at this point, I found them very useful against the hero pieces, which I started to come into contact with hero pieces now, and I've got 2 of my own, but the pieces that gain 30 points of damage every turn they survive. So as soon as I basically at this point, like, okay, I'm going to hold on to the assassins. If they're in my hand, great, I'm going to hold on to them, because if my opponent throws down a hero, bam, I'm taking that guy out immediately.
Yeah, because it seems like the opponents that have hero pieces do a pretty good job of preventing me from just surrounding that piece to take it. Because there's been more than a handful of times that I've taken on an opponent that has a hero piece, and like I immediately start trying to just surround the piece, and as I get like 2 or 3 pieces, they manage to just keep it to where I just can't surround them. So yeah, having those assassin pieces is very, very helpful to get rid of those stronger pieces. Because I think there was one.
That's one tactic I've seen kind of fall by the wayside as the boards have gotten larger, is just being able to just take their units out and send them to the graveyard by surrounding them. I did that all the time on the smaller boards like the 6x6 and even the 8x8. Well, no, maybe I'm thinking just like the 4x4s. But as the board sizes have gotten bigger, it seems like the opponent, since they just have such a wide area to put units also, they're kind of they're spreading them out instead of getting them all bunched together.
And I've started having I've started thinking maybe I need to change from like the flame charge or whatever special attack to something else, because I have had more opponents with the revive capability, bringing back those hero pieces that I assassinated, and then I ended up having one person, like I used an assassin, I took out the hero, and they used their revive thing, brought the hero piece back, put it back on the board, and I think it was like I think it was that I only had one assassin, so trying to get that piece back off the board was fairly problematic. And I think the piece ended up ballooning to like 500 something points of damage. So that piece alone was just hitting for so much. But yeah, like, so now I've worked a couple of additional assassins into my deck so that hopefully I can prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, I've thought about changing my ability to that revive one specifically, just for what you elaborated upon, but I'm just focused on doing a lot of damage, getting my damage up, because, you know, even though we are at these higher ranks in this, the matches still do not take that long. So, I mean, I figure by the time I start reviving some units, it's like, well, we're each going to have like 1,000 or 2,000 of our original 6,000 HP total or something like that. So it's going to be like a turn, and then the game's over anyways.
Yeah.
And I like, and you know, my deck is very evenly spread out now. Even though I do say like, hey, I'm focusing on attack, I've got a well-balanced deck where I've got like basically like at least 3 of every type, or most every type. And so that includes the snipers, which reduce the opponent's MP. So that's kind of one of my ways of countering their revival. And of course, like I said, with these maps getting so large, at this point I'm just not killing their units unless it's by an assassin. In which case then it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, you're going to revive units, but you're just going to revive that one, and I still have a couple more assassins at my disposal.
Well, hopefully, you know, Square Enix has done some stuff in the past where they've made some of the mini games within a game kind of its own game, like with Triple Triad, or they've made their own like physical trading card games and stuff. I would like to see them do a little bit more with Isoa, like make it its own standalone thing where it's, you know, where you can take on other people. It'd also be kind of cool to have like a like 2-on-2, like have you know, where you can team up with a friend or something against 2 other people. That'd be kind of cool. But yeah, like I'm enjoying it, and it's a good little you know, time sink, I guess. When, you know, not really wanting to progress the story too much, but, you know, you come across some like a new area, and then it's like, oh, here's new Isoa players and new challenges. So it essentially, so you cleared up a bunch of your Isoa challenges. I've actually started making a list of some of the some of the people I need to go back to, which I might. Now that I think about it, I might be able to knock some of these off my list. Because there's one person in Larset Village, the undefeated old master.
Which I imagine he's going to be the final one because he's got the Grandmaster rank, and he's the only one I've seen with that.
And then I've got the Urban Man, which I think I may have already. I think I may have already beat him because he's in the Royal Capital on the right side. And
Urban Man, yeah, a level 6 master.
So I may have beaten him and just forgot to go back and mark that off. So I'll put a question mark there. And then the dangerously alluring woman that is in the Royal Capital inside the bar.
Level 8 master.
So I need to check my level, but I might be able to take her on.
Yeah, so if we're doing that,
I'm not sure.
Let me look and see. Then you may also need the where is this? The man craving a challenge, level 8 master, in the Ada item shop.
All right, so that.
And
you said the Ada.
Yeah,
item shop?
the Ada item shop. And then also
make a note of that one.
The uproarious soldier, level 6 master, in Baldar, beneath the stairs in the Southern Division. That's one that I did not get a chance to actually fight whenever I was in Baldar, so I'm assuming we get to come back to Baldar. I mean, it still shows up on the map just as an area you can't travel to or fast travel to. I assume we retake it at some point.
So, for the most part, with the kingdom, shooting first, and the Vale Empire, quote unquote, defending itself and attacking Baldar, essentially. We've already got past that point.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, we're in Kato. We're boarding the ship. We're going to Nilbeth. And, they drop...
Midas...
Theo drops that Nilbeth, Vale Empire, has actually had some boats out, basically roaming the seas around there for a little bit, actually. So, that kind of shows that they had maybe some intent even before all of the Baldar situation took place. But, kind of is what it is. But... he's going to be the one escorting them to Nilbeth.
And I mean, he's got some pretty good. Like he's been a guest with the party, so kind of that fifth fighter for the squad. I would imagine at some point, I'm not entirely sure because even where I'm at, he's still not a playable character. But I mean, he can kind of handle his own in combat.
Yeah,
I've seen some of his moves.
I wouldn't be surprised if he does eventually become he can just be added to your party willy nilly.
But essentially, as we're on the boat, heading over to Nilbeth.
As we're on the boat, nothing takes place on the boat. It's just okay. You are in Kato, fade to black. Now you're in Nilbeth.
Now you're there. So. Essentially, the populace of Nilbeth are called the Trathen, which Midas and I think Midas is the only one who has history with the leader of the Trathen.
Yeah, and kind of explains why Maltheo is wanting Midas specifically to come with them. It's like, oh, you're actually very, very close with the leader of the Trathen.
Yeah, they don't go into detail, but it's very, very, very alluded to that there's history between Malkia, the leader of the Trathen, and Midas. And I did forget Malkia does have some ties with Albert a little bit.
Oh yeah. I mean, not just some ties. She's got deep ties to him.
So, Um,
In the
so
before you get to the ancient coil, you've got like kind of the lush jungles or the lush hilly forests of Nilbeth. Did you explore any of that before just going straight into the ancient coil?
yeah, did a little bit of exploration.
Did you fight the flower mountain, like the big massive
Yes.
flower? So one thing I'll just say,
Yes.
about that and ask if it happened to you, but that was kind of a challenging battle for us, just because it had these little underlings that you had to attack before it was really susceptible to attack. But
More status elements than most fights.
yeah, it also had a bunch of like poison or something, which I mean it's foreshadowed very very blatantly, so you had a good chance to just dodge and get out of there. Took me a while to pick up on that, because whenever you don't, you basically die in just like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, let me
It hits hard.
let me see if Nina's going to revive me, or if I'm impatient, let me just toggle somebody else, use an item on myself. But that battle was kind of lengthy, and part of it for me was because realizing, okay, whenever you're basically down to like one of those one little underling enemies, your allies, they are sitting there trying to attack it or trying to get to it, but they're just running into the flower mountain. They're not going around.
Yeah. I've kind of noticed that in a couple areas as well.
Yeah, it's no big thing. It's just kind of funny, kind of annoying. Just like, okay, your AI scripting is written just to get like the quickest points between A and B is a straight line.
Yeah, and if something is blocking that path, well,
It's still the
maybe
quickest.
if we run harder, maybe we'll get there. But yeah, it took me. Let's see. I had like 2 people die, and then Raymond was almost dead. Raymond's pretty much the character that I control the most. But I remember like I was hitting and stuff. I was like, man, I'm not doing a whole lot of damage. And on the back of the thing was a weak point. So like I basically revived. I think at this point I was using Midas, Letitia, and Nina as my party members, and Nina and Midas had been knocked out. I revived them, got everybody back up to good health, and then I started attacking the weak point and was doing much more damage to it, attacking that like glowing spot on its back. But yeah, another issue that I was running into is that it was having some frame rate issues throughout the fight, and occasionally, even though I would be targeting the weak point, occasionally it would cycle to one of the underlings. I'm like, that's not what I want to be fighting right now.
Gotta lock on.
I mean, I would be locked on because I would lock on, I would zoom around, and I'd just start wailing on that weak point, and then like I would adjust the camera, and it would like, oh, you want to target that thing now, and I'm like, no, I'd end up dashing.
I don't think you were locked on then.
Well, I have no idea what could be happening then.
What I do to reliably lock on is press left and right on the D-pad, and that's also what I use whenever I'm fighting an enemy that has targetable attack points, like their specific arms or whatnot, because not only does it cycle through either the enemies around you or the various body parts, it also just locks on immediately. So that's, I think we discussed it before. It's like, okay, it's kind of hard to tell whenever the reticle is the lock-on reticle or just the targeting reticle. That's one surefire way to know, because as soon as you hit left or right, it just locks you on.
And maybe it's something where, like, I'm not really sure, because like I feel like I lock on, and at least in some of the fights it just I have no idea, but
anyways,
outside of the like the Osirian plains and the high roads, there's not a lot of it. This area kind of reminds me more of that area before you get to Delric Village, just kind of a wooded area, just not a lot of sights, but
yeah, so the Midas Malkia, they've got history. Malkia, Like so many of these characters are just like over the top design wise. Like she's got ridiculous, like ludicrous pink hair. She's kind of
braided.
It looks like the Trathans are kind of like an elf-like race. She's got pointed ears. She's got all sorts of like sexy body armor, including like little body armor pieces for her ear tips.
Yeah, like
and just a massive rack.
Yeah, and that was kind of so. You got Raymond, who just kind of a run of the mill type of character with weird scars on his body. You got Letitia, who is very much like a princess that does not have any concerns of being out and battling and stuff. So she's got she's very armored up. Albert doesn't, as far as like the stuff that is in the cutscenes or just running around, just normal. I mean, I guess not normal clothes, but mostly just clothes, cloth. And then you've got the gigantic cannons that are the arms of Midas and his pimp hat, and he's a semiomancer, one of the most powerful semiomancers out there. But just looks like he could arm wrestle, Arnold Schwarzenegger for days. And then Malkia, who is very slender, very sexual, insane hair, just and then she's got these like gauntlets on her hands that just are just razor sharp claw looking things. But yeah, just a very the character designs in this game are just very over the top and out there, which I guess, I mean, that's kind of par for the course for Japanese games.
Yeah, I mean, I dig
especially
it. It's kind of
JRPGs
of the vibe. It's of the era. This is very much a PS2 RPG.
Yeah, and like Malkia does become a playable character a little bit later from I think we're because you went through the ancient coil, so you actually got to have her as a party member, right?
Yeah, she's been in the party.
Okay.
Leveled her up, equipped her with all sorts of good stuff.
As far as like her play style, I really like her because she's melee but also magic. A lot of her abilities on the skill tree just are very, like, she's either right there in your face or she's got range to be able to kind of keep you at bay. So it's been fun kind of
in setting up her chain combos. It seemed like she had a lot of good kicks, like a lot of really strong kicks that launched enemies and also had good range.
Yeah.
Just very strong.
Yeah, and that's like I said, I really enjoyed, really enjoy building her combos up. And now that I've got a good amount of like attack skills and abilities and stuff for the characters, like actually going back through and kind of retooling things, like, okay, so how is this going to tie better with this? Like, is this fast enough for this? Like, is this setting this final attack up, properly? Because starting to get a couple of abilities that do chain pretty well together. Like this move does more damage if the enemy is in the air.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, oh, okay. So now it's like, okay, I can.
This is kind of like a natural combo.
Yeah. Instead of being like Tekken, which it's still very much like Tekken, of just mashing a button until you win. There's a little bit of strategy starting to form with the combos. But as with
so Malky, I mean, she recognizes them, Leticia and Albert. Of course, she recognizes Midas, but she recognizes and Midas throughout this whole session too. Like, you guys get on Nilbeth and then you hear gunfire or something, he like rushes off. The last couple times, whenever Nilbeth has been brought up, he's like, "What?"
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, he's actually showing concern. Like, there's some sort of connection here. But Malkia does recognize, Leticia and Albert. Then she says, "Oh yeah, his arm is an osseous core from me."
Yeah. So I think it's just a part of her.
Yeah, basically just part of her.
She gave up.
I think in the incident that occurred, she basically just donated a limb. She sacrificed one of her limbs just because the Trathans, they can regenerate that stuff, and that even is mentioned, I think, whenever Melthia is talking about it, maybe that, they can reproduce asexually even.
Yeah, and so I think so. Essentially, after meeting up with her, the group is like, okay, well, we're here to hopefully for you to allow us to, do some research and mine some of the Levitas ore that is available in Nilbeth. And of course, that leads to the ancient coil. But one thing with it is, some of the team stays behind, because the idea is that Raymond and the active party is going to go into the ancient coil to start mining Levitas ore. They come across a small little vein and like, oh, well, that's not going to be enough. We need to find a bigger vein. And
wait a minute, what you're saying? Some people stay behind?
Yeah. There's a couple characters. I think like Malthia stays behind in the.
Okay. Yeah, not party members.
Oh well, yeah.
Okay, and you're jumping ahead because, of course, with this game, you get there, you get back to the ancient coil, you're in Malkia's room, you're like, okay, well, here's what we're here for. We need the Levitas ore. And she's like, okay, yeah, that's no problem. But I got something for you to do for me.
Oh, yeah.
And so, I mean, it's just a simple thing like, hey, the Imperials, they've got a small force here on Nilbeth. I don't want them here. Help me take them out, and then sure, you have free reign to the ancient coil, the sacred grounds, you can mine that stuff. And there was just like a couple groups there, and they weren't too bad to deal with. But then, of course, whenever you're whenever you're gone, like, oh, now you hear gunshots or you hear weaponry back at the Capitol, and so then you rush back there, and hey, there's Imperials who have invaded the ancient coil, and they're being led by this dude named Gaston. This pale-skinned horned fellow that apparently was the one who Leticia, Albert, and Nina fought whenever they separated from the party when Elena was being repaired.
And I'm not sure if it was at this point or if it's a little bit later on. It may be a little bit later on, but essentially the horned people are named, I think, Varians.
Okay, that's new to me.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
so for the most part,
at this point, Ray just I think they had speculated before. He's like, at this point, okay, yeah, they stomp him in battle, no problem. He flees, but at this point, Ray's like, yeah, they're definitely off-worlders from a developed planet, because he knows what Duma is for sure.
Yeah, and they are on the hunt for Duma, and anything similar to Duma.
And so then before going into the ancient coil sacred grounds to actually get the stuff now there's another little side thing. It's like, okay, well, Midas is also, Malkia is talking to the group. Midas has also told me why y'all are here, so I can repair Albert's arm too. And then kind of like what you had on Devotion Hill, that kind of one-on-one with Leticia, that we have another one-on-one with her outside Ancient Coil, and now she finally reveals the incident that happened 14 years ago, where a decrepit piece of the castle was falling. Albert pushed her out of the way, suffered the damage, basically lost his arm. But the three wise men, Malkia, they had the technology through semiomancy and, of course, through her unique body features, was able to donate an arm to him. And then everybody was like, hey, that's blasphemy. We don't like transplanting limbs from one species to the other. And, it led to basically Leticia's father capitulating to Leticia's lord uncle, who was the lead prosecutor in the case, and driving off the three wise men, severing ties with Nilbeth, sending Malkia back from the Semiomancy Consortium, like all this stuff. And that's like, this is kind of like that missing piece where finally, instead of being spoon-fed like hints at what had happened that had caused, the division between the kingdom and the Imperials, and Midas to flee and the three wise men to be like excommunicated. It's like, okay, I feel like I have the whole picture now.
Yeah, the puzzle pieces are coming together, and let's see. I think another little facet of Albert and Malkia is the fact that whenever Albert is near her, like she mentions that it like drains like
the osseous core that he has on his arm is basically detrimental to his health.
Yeah, and being too close to Malkia ends up like rapidly reducing his energy, and his he just gets sicker. But he's after he gets his new fancy arm. He's all better. Everything seems to be fine. And then
Melthia comes with bad news. A messenger from the capital.
Yeah. Essentially, what was it?
The king's wounds have worsened. Basically, hey, come back. The king's wounds have worsened, and also there's been some like suspicious activity around Baldar. Basically, Neon has recalled Princess Leticia.
Yeah, and trying not to skip ahead, but there's there's just so much that ends up happening, but so little at the same time, and it's like, okay, well, is it the first time I went back to this area, or is it the third time I went back to this area that this happened? So that I think at this point, the party does split up, I believe.
Yeah. Leticia and Albert, they go back to the capital. The rest of the group descends to the ancient coil, and they eventually do find Levitasor down there.
Yeah, and this is kind of even with my notes, like, since there's so much like back and forth, it's like, okay, is this when this happens? But anyway, so yeah, they come across like that little small Levitas ore, but it's not enough. Instead of just taking some with them, they're like, oh, we'll leave it. So they go further in, and of course, it's a video game, so there's puzzles to ensue.
Just like one.
Yeah, I didn't really have any issues or any troubles with it. It's just basically moving blocks around to just get deeper into the coil. But the group was specifically tasked with going and mining Levitas ore. You know what the group doesn't do when they find the Levitas ore? They don't mine it. They're like, oh, here it is. Let's go back up and tell everyone we found it. You already knew that it was down there. Like, the entire point of going down there was to mine the Levitas ore.
Well, I mean, they knew it was down there. They didn't know where, though. Because that's even Michaela has said that, where it's like, yeah, it's down there. We just don't know where. I
mean, but at the end of the day, like, they split off, and Melthia even mentions, like, when you talk to her, like her one sentence thing that she says before you head down there and you talk to her, she's like, I apologize for leaving the mining of the ore to you. and then you go down and you go through all that stuff, and then Raymond's like, all right, we found it, let's go tell everybody. You went down there to mine this ore. Like, why do we keep coming across so many of these areas, so much of this story where it's like, okay, we found the thing, let's go back. Like, but anyway, after they find the ore, which like I said, the puzzles, it's not really challenging. It's
and again, I would say puzzle. There's only one puzzle. The other stuff that's necessary for actual traversing, it's just like basically press this button. There's like maybe one or two other optional paths where treasure chests or some items lay, but it's just basically press the button in this order. There was just like one puzzle room.
Yeah, to like shoot the little thing to, and that's another. I mean, it's a video game. It's a game that didn't have a huge budget, but in an area before the coil, you're able to cut through vines and branches and that kind of stuff. In the coil, you kind of come across something that appears to be thinner than the stuff that you've already cut through before, and the game just won't let you cut through it. You have to shoot. You have to line things up properly to shoot a little ball of energy to burn the roots or whatever. I will admit that kind of at this point I was getting annoyed with the game, because there was just so many things that were happening that just I could feel it was just waste of time. Just so many things that from let me touch this one thing, and then there's a very brief little cutscene of this thing opening that's right in front of me, or just weird little nuance things that. But I like I said, I at this point I was starting to get a little annoyed with the game, because there was just so much to fill time, and it just wasn't enjoyable. But
whenever you get back to the surface, then you're greeted by General Canis of the kingdom, and he says, "Hey, I'm bringing you guys in. I'm arresting you. You guys
under arrest.
Yeah, you brought the princess into a war zone. There's something else, and then also you're conspiring with Nilbeth to overthrow the kingdom."
Yeah, like there's.
It's like brah. Brah.
Even
who you fooling?
Like as he's saying these lines, I was like, "Oh my God, you're stupid!" Like you're this, and I don't remember what he's the general of.
It's just got to be an infantry or something, because I mean, they don't have. They have a navy. Theo's the head of that, and then other than that, it's like, okay, I guess people.
Yeah.
You don't have just flying crafts. Maybe there's those like horse-like creatures. Maybe there's a squad of those or something.
So yeah, like he's like, oh well, you're under arrest for XYZ, crimes, and I didn't have any issues stomping him into the ground.
No. Yeah, I mean, I don't know that you actually fight him. I think it's just a bunch of his lackeys. I think he's actually, I noticed, I think he's just like right in the hallway, but there's an invisible barrier preventing you to get to him. But yeah, I mean, you stomp him, and, he says, well, Duke Clemrath is basically is probably already ascended the throne. And then a little bit before that battle too, Elena's signal, her like communicator signal had went offline. So Ray and the party sees that as a sign like, oh, something's happening. We got to get back.
Yeah, I don't know if it's in this little conversation or if it's a little bit later on, but like Raymond goes from being concerned that Helena is dead to, oh yeah, no, I can just turn her back on. It's okay. And like everybody has a reaction of, what? You could, what do you mean you can just turn her back on? As if she hasn't been repaired already. Mm-hmm. Like, So, uh,
But yeah, and then they're like, well, we got to get back in a hurry. The ship's already gone. We probably can't go back on Canis's ship because even though we have, far superior firepower, we're much stronger than them. They're not going to sail the ship for us. And then Michaela reveals, well, I've got a secret transportation technique that I can send you back.
yeah.
And that is right where I have stopped. That's right where I got up to.
Okay. Okay. So do you know what her transportation thing is?
No. I mean, she's just said,
Okay.
hey, I can do this. Let me know when you're ready to go.
Okay. So for the most part, like I said, I had started kind of getting just annoyed with how some of the developments were going on, and just really wishing that they wouldn't just like shallowly tell the story. But yeah, like I said, a lot of stuff happens, but not like it's very easy to just be forgettable. Outside of getting to play around as Malkia, as far as like that area, like she was it was just a nice, refreshing character to add to the party because of the skills and stuff that she can learn. I do like the fact that the characters that you get have a pretty good amount of what is it, SP that you can cash in on like the skill tree or powering up abilities. Because yeah, like she went from nothing to a lot of stuff. So
yeah. I mean, they got to do that though. Otherwise, you're going to have such a great disparity. Like, okay, we're all level 50 and powered up, and you're level 20 and you can't take a hit. So then you're dying and actually just not getting a chance to level up. So yeah, I mean, they got to give you a bunch to start off with.
Well, and I guess to kind of reword it, I like the fact that instead of the character like already having a bunch of stuff unlocked when you first get the character, they're just like, here's a bunch of points, develop the character as you want. Instead of just being like, well, we've already got X amount of stuff already unlocked on the skill tree. You can develop her from here, but we've already kind of paved the way.
Yeah, I mean, I find it fun unlocking all that stuff, even if it is just, okay, here's a bunch to start from square one. But at the same time, it's like, okay, there's not a ton of diversity you can do. It's like at some point, you're just going to unlock everything.
Yeah. Have you been doing much crafting? Because I haven't.
No, I mean, it's just, I am not, these last couple sessions outside of the one where I basically just played Asoa, I've just been kind of progressing the story, knowing that you were ahead of me, so I was trying to catch up. So I'm not kind of focused on side quests or stuff that I would be just venturing through the lands. Because it's generally whenever I'm venturing through the lands, picking up items that I'm like, okay, my blueberries are maxed out. Let me go craft stuff with blueberries and eat those all up.
And I guess another question is, are you surprised that there's an inside job that's with as far as like the kingdom and Canis and stuff, and like his like this like trying to overthrow the kingdom or the king and the princess and all that stuff? Are you surprised?
Not really. I mean, there's whenever she got back, there's kind of with the conversation with Nayan, like, oh, basically don't tell anyone I've been gone or don't tell anyone I've been back. So I forget how it was worded, but there's a lot of secrecy on that part. And then just having so many different members of the cabinet, and especially of the military, there was kind of some foreshadowing. I think before you go to Baldar, I don't think you're really convening with. Yeah, I don't think you meet with anyone besides Naon, really. But then whenever you get back, then it's everyone's there. Like Canis, Clemrath, all these people who say like
Lambert.
All these people who say like 4 lines, and then that's the extent of it. So I mean, I don't know, not super surprised that happened, but it's like
kind of need some additional like story development to push things through. But yeah, that's I remember sending you a picture just of one of my notes of just we came all this way to walk back with nothing, um, which was going down the ancient coil, seeing the Levitas war, and essentially the group just being like, well, there it is. Let's go back now.
Yeah,
but,
I mean, that kind of rings hollow to me though, because like even if they're not physically like doing the mining themselves, it's like the next cutscene is them with the locals like bagging up the ore. So I mean, they do get it.
I don't well.
Yeah,
I don't remember that cutscene, but
yeah, because whenever you go back with Melthea and you're like, hey, we found it, here it is. There's one of the Trathans in the background who's like bagging up the ore. Like you've got all these bags of ore.
Yeah, I guess that makes it a little bit better. I guess just with my just annoyances piling, I guess I just didn't notice. But did one thing that I kind of, as far as like we're starting to get across a couple of bosses that are at least posing a little bit more of a threat. Did you have any issues with Thanatos, the Thanatos of the Ruin?
Is that just like the Grim Reaper enemy?
Yeah, the big boss like right before the Levitas ore area.
No, nothing of note. I mean, the thing that has given me the most challenge so far, I think, was just that flower mountain. And that was just because, it took a couple phases for me to realize, okay, this poison is just going to kill me immediately. I got to dodge out of the way. And then, okay, if I defeat these little underlings, then that opens up the weak points. And then, hey, why are my allies getting stuck on it? Over here, guys.
Yeah, like go around.
There's, the thing that made that stick out for me was just the fact that one of the things I unlocked for Nina as soon as possible was a resurrection spell. So I would maybe have to use those items less frequently. And so, like, the second time I went down, it's like, okay, well, I'm just going to wait here because Nina should come resurrect me. And after waiting like 10 seconds, I was like, okay, where's Nina? And so I like switch over to her. It's like, oh, she's running into the flower mountain. So then I just basically moved her around myself and then switched back to Ray, and then boom, she revived me.
Yeah, so not the smartest AI, but Nina has been a very good, like, helpful team member, with all of her various skills of like boosting defense and guts and healing and reviving and all that kind of stuff. But outside of Star Ocean, since I'm further than that, so we'll just kind of end on that note.
And did you play anything else? Because I was going to say I have played other stuff, but I would also say that's just a good place to end it.
I mean, I really didn't play. I played a little bit more of Vampire Survivors.
Yeah, I seen you passed me in the achievement count.
Got a couple more characters unlocked. Did a little bit more.
And there's just a patch for it too, like last week that this week or last week that added 2 achievements and 2 other things.
God, it didn't need more achievements.
No, I think, and I think the way it has been in early access, and it's it's quote unquote launched since then, but it seems like the way this is going to work out is where the developer is just going to continue adding stuff and just be like, okay, here's something else for it, and then maybe like a couple months goes by, hey, here's something else for it.
I mean, like I'm knocking out a lot of achievements, but it's just a never-ending achievement thing with that one.
It's gonna be fun to try and complete it. It's not going to be too difficult, and it's going to be satisfying the whole way. And you're just going to basically experience everything it has to offer. That's one where I have not played it, I think, since the last podcast. And that's one where it's like, okay, I'm going to make time for this at some point. I've just haven't. So
I'm pretty sure we could probably make an entire other episode, because I'm sure you've played more Pokemon.
Yeah, I played more Pokemon, BEs, so I've got a lot to talk about besides Star Ocean, but
Oh yeah, I forgot that you beat Ease.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good time to call it quits.
Yeah, about an hour and 15 minutes. I think that's a good stopping point. We may have to do recording later in the week to get the rest of your week with beating Ease and obviously with Pokemon. But pretty good episode. I think I'm
Unlike the last one, we actually made significant Star Ocean progress.
Yeah, and up against other games. But so yeah, we will be back with episode 21 with mostly more Star Ocean. We trying to get other games in there too, but mostly Star Ocean, the Divine Force coverage of our playthrough sessions. Especially since we are staying pretty close to each other as far as story goes. So, but we will be back next week with episode 21 of Just One More Podcast. I am Jeff from Just One More Level.
I was John from mybrainongames.com.
See ya, everybody.